You.
All right, Miss Della, you do it, and we're gonna follow along with you,
But
baby.
you're gonna do intros, right?
Mm-mm.
What?
No, you intro. All right,
Me? Seriously?
I will if you want me
Okay. Yes, please.
to. Okay. Welcome. Hello. Welcome. Is it on?
Yeah, you're on.
Oh, we are so excited.
Forgot to turn the TV on.
Oh, wow. Well, welcome to the Trailer Park Show. We are so excited to be here. We've got a super, super awesome guest in our presence tonight. We're so excited. Adella and I, we hadn't had a chance to have our women's show, and y'all know we do rock the mic, don't we, Della? Yes, we do.
Ladies style.
So on our far right is our current chairman of the Travis County Republican Party, and he is James Dickey, and we care about this man so much. We're so glad that he's taken the time out to be with us today. And of course, in the middle, my co-host, Miss Adella. What would I do without her? So we're gonna let her rip. Go, Della, go.
I I have nothing to say at this point as far as Mr. Morrow, but I have worked very closely with Mr. James Dickey, and he has given me the very much needed opportunity to reach out to the Hispanic voter outreach, and I'm very thankful. And he has been the protege of some very great-minded people. It's not like this is one candidate versus the other. No, I can account, because I have to be personally involved with Mr. James Dickey, that he is a man of integrity. Look up the campaign. Look up whatever it is that you need to do to Google. But I personally can vouch for Mr. James Dickey, in which case I will hand it off to him, our current chairman, James Dickey, who has done such a superb job at leading our TCRP in such a great direction, to where I can say that I am a Hispanic outreach director for TCRP. On that note, I handed it off to Mr. James Dickey.
Well, ladies, it is a real pleasure to be here on the ladies' side of the Trailer Park Show. I am,
He's our first male guest.
yes. And I'm very happy that you guys gave me this opportunity to speak to your viewers about what we've been doing at the Travis County Republican Party and what we hope will continue over the next few years. We've got a lot of work to do in Travis County. Republicans have made headway, need to continue to make headway, and the great news is there are a ton of fantastic volunteers, candidates, office holders, all of whom together are going to make a big difference here.
Wow.
Okay, so before we move forward, if you don't mind, Mr. Dickey, Chairman Dickey, I'm sorry, please, for maybe some of our first-time viewers, please explain to us what a county chairman actually does and what their specific duties are, and how that interplays with local politics and federal politics, because you have spoken on our behalf as the Travis County chairman.
Yep.
So that does play into national politics. So in your own opinion, I would love for you to expand on what the chairman duties are and expected of the chairman.
Sure. Well, the most important duties of the chairman are the legally required ones, and that includes the actual operation of the primary. What most people don't realize, because we kind of make it look seamless, it's actually the chairman of the Republican Party and the chairman of the Democrat Party in each county that's responsible legally, according to state law, for running the primary election. So the primary election, the early voting and election day, and the runoff election, both early voting and election day, the actual staffing, operation, conducting of that election is legally the responsibility of the elected chairman. So what that means in a practical sense here in Travis County is that we negotiate an arrangement with the county. The county has election staff that have to be employed anyway because they have to run the general election. We outsource to them the operating of what we call the joint primary, because both the Republican Party and the Democrat Party, we save some money by working together and both agreeing to license, to contract with the county to use their machines instead of each of us having to buy our own machines, to use one location instead of each of us having to find our own locations. But then on top of that, even though they handle most of those details, we have to recruit every election judge, clerk, and alternate judge that's needed for all those locations. So in the primary, that meant 25 early voting locations and 200 election day locations. And even in the runoff, we're going to be looking at, probably half those kind of numbers. So it means recruiting for election day 600 to 800 workers.
Wow.
To staff all of those voting locations to make sure that when people show up to vote, and this last time we actually had 40% of the voters show up and vote on election day, which was a pretty big percentage, especially of such a big number. The primary voting levels this time were 100% higher than they were 4 years ago in the last presidential election.
That is an astounding number. Let's just take into effect that that's an astounding number.
It really is. It
Yeah.
really is. And most people do come out. I think the bulk of the people, the voters, should I say, come out and vote when it is a presidential race, opposed to that off year. But that was a lot, and I'm not sure why people still wait to the last minute to vote. On voting day, you see the lines wrapped around, everywhere they go and vote, and especially down at Travis County, it was so many people down there. But I do like to take advantage of early voting because I get to vote wherever. We all get to vote anywhere where there's a voting place to go and vote. It's so important.
And see, and I can speak for Caldwell County because we didn't have the long waiting lines that you speak of, because I've done Caldwell County as well. But for me and for my idea in being an outreach director, I have looked to a leader above myself, such as Mr. Dickey, to give me some guidance. Give me some guidance based on numbers, statistics, not just me talking to myself and blowing up my own ego. I actually wanted to do something that was pragmatic, that was tangible, that could be maybe put forth on some sort of legislation. But I hope that one of the things that Mr. Dickey has very much implemented is the outreach, whether it's Michael Lee, Esquire, for the African American outreach direction, or myself as the Hispanic outreach direction. It doesn't matter. We are Americans. And Mr. Dickey has done a very good job of cohesively keeping that message and portraying it to Austin, to Travis County. We're not looking at Marco Rubio. We're not looking at Trump. We're not looking at Cruz. We're looking at James Dickey. And because I've had the experience of working with James Dickey, I can speak for the man himself, and that I can't speak for Marco Rubio. I can't speak for Ted Cruz. I can't speak for James Dickey. And he is a man of integrity. He is a man that has made me feel comfortable doing what I do in a man's world. I'm a woman walking in the shoes of a man. And James Dickey has done a very good job at integrating me and helping me work through what is predominantly a man's world. Politics. Let's call it what it is. And James Dickey has never been lewd, never been never protruded any misconduct. He's always kept it to the point, factual, and what can help me moving forward with my specific demographics that I choose to move forward with. I can't speak on his opponent's behalf, but this is Chairman Dickey's episode. So moving forward with Chairman Dickey's episode, this is what I've experienced from Chairman Dickey, and it really means a lot to the women voters, because when you take into account of women donors, women voters, women candidates, we have to take into consideration what our chairman, what our leader provides for us. And I can speak personally that Chairman Dickey has given me a lot of room for growth and extending my female voice, my female vote, my millennial vote, my minority vote beyond just what the Republican Party as a whole has presented forth. Mr. Dickey, Chairman Dickey, is in and of himself his own specimen, because he has dealt with Austin and Travis County in a way that I haven't seen within my lifetime. I mean, So
Well, thank you.
I don't think that there's enough gratitude to express towards Chairman Dickey, and that has nothing to take away from the incoming chairman. I have to make that very clear. You can be pro our current chairman without being anti our incoming chairman. And that's basically a lot
thanks.
what I learned with Mr. Dickey, Chairman Dickey as our chairman.
Well, I appreciate that, and that fits really well with the other half of the responsibility of the chairman. In addition to running the legal part of all of the actual election, the other job for the chairman is to grow the party. And one of the things, near and dear to my heart is to make sure that we do that. I'm a firm believer that the policies of the Republican Party, when lived out, when really implemented, really do result in a better future for all. But part of the spreading of that message requires that you show people that you believe in these policies because you care about people, not because you're in some way selfish or you're some sort of a Scrooge. And it's very important to reach people. I had a business mentor who said, people don't care what you know until they know that you care. And that's absolutely true. It's even more so true in politics. It's important to reach out to all communities, all age groups, all of the members of the community and say, we really have solutions that will make your life better. Come, let's talk about it, and then let's implement these together, and let's make everyone better off. And that communicating that well was how I was focused on growing the party, growing elected officials, growing the donor base, growing all of that. And that is the other half of the chairman's job. That's what you really have to do. To do the chairman's job properly, you have to run the election right, and then you have to grow the party. And those are the two halves of the job.
And I think growing that party has a lot to do with, really being diverse and getting out there and just making yourself available to the people, which is what you've done already. And we truly enjoy that. We have been so grateful to you for that. Just really coming together. It's been such an awesome thing. I love the events that, the party has put on, and the public have shown up, and it's been a great thing. So it's just so important, that you rally with the people, behind the people, and as being that leader, getting out there in front of us as well, too. It's been really good.
Exactly. We can change the face of the Republican Party, especially here in Travis County. And step one is just to make people realize they're welcome, and that doesn't happen overnight. And it certainly doesn't happen with just one person. That takes hundreds of people living out their lives in an intentional way.
Mm-hmm. Which is awesome.
So I'm curious for whether it's someone like me or some other millennial or younger than me that actually decides to run for chairmanship, which is probably one of the first steps to take that I see would be fruitful in moving forward. If you ever want to be a senator, if you want to be president of the United States, it would make sense to understand what a chairman does. And the trials and errors that come with being a precinct chairman or being a chairman of a county like Travis County that is very predominantly liberal. So I do have to give it to Chairman Dickey that he's been able to conform to whatever it is that's in Travis County that makes it work. I don't know how, I think even Austin City Council can be like, what is it that makes this work? But somehow Chairman Dickey has been able to do that. And so because I personally, and I say this, but this is my personal opinion, I have gained a great deal of knowledge from Chairman Dickey. So for me, it would be very important for you to name one of your greatest accomplishments during your chairmanship and what was kind of like unexpected and a hurdle that you overcame that gives hope to younger millennial or minority Republicans like Marilyn and myself.
I appreciate that. I would have to say that the accomplishment I'm most proud of over the last couple of years, I served one 2-year term. And over that time, and the groundwork was laid long before I got here, but I was able to help get it over the finish line. And that was to have the Austin City Council, for the first time ever, to have not one, not two, but three Republicans sitting on the city council. And two of those having very, very conservative voting records while they're on the council. That was a natural result of our strategy, which was partly born out of necessity, right? Necessity is the mother of invention. We look at the county demographics and go, okay, there are some scenarios where we might be able to win a countywide race, but that's going to be very, very hard. So what can we focus on that is winnable, where we can make a real big difference? And also, what really affects people's lives? And the reality is, while it's not glamorous and it's not the top of everybody's list, the city council, the school board, the MUD, those local taxing authorities, those local boards, they can impact your life more from a tax standpoint, more from a regulatory standpoint than any other entity around, including the federal government. And so by focusing on those and working to try to recruit good candidates, to try to train good candidates, to support those candidates, we can make a huge difference in the daily life of people in Travis County. We can also expose people to Republican ideas and at least have them be in the conversation. A couple of people said, well, so what? You get 1, 2, or 3 city council people. There are 11 people on the council when you count the mayor, and they're going to get outvoted all the time. And my response always was, okay, but now instead of the conversation only being about how much to raise taxes, somebody on the dais is actually going to say, should we raise taxes?
Well.
And the whole conversation changes at least a little bit, even if you don't necessarily win the vote. I mean, that's why it's so important. Commissioner Gerald Doherty, he's one of 5, right? He's got 20% of the vote. He's not going to automatically win a majority, but he's constantly raising the important questions of being respectful of the limited resources that we all have, and making sure that the city, the county, that at each level of government we're using it as properly and only as we should.
That is a great way to end that comment, actually, because in doing outreach, my role specifically is to do quote unquote Hispanic outreach, but I was never offered this sort of opportunity until Chairman Dickey came along. And Miss Marilyn, if you want to add anything as far as to the minority vote, because we can look at this and we can do this sort of spectacle of race division as many other news outlets have done. But Mr. Dickey, being the quote unquote color he is, the color I am, and the color that Miss Marilyn is, we are sitting here cohesively having a very objective, subjective, and educated sort of conversation. So with our chairman as he is, he's looking at 2 quote unquote colored women and giving them advice as to how to move forward with the Republican Party. That is something to be said for. That is not something that is to be brushed aside for Mr. Dickey and for Chairman Dickey and his efforts in outreaching. So Miss Marilyn, if you'd like to kind of touch on that point.
It's been really good. And James mentioned something too, or just a moment ago, about how the tracks were laid before he came. We had another great chairperson, and she's still involved in doing things for the Republican Party, Rosemary. And I just like the fact that it was like the baton was handed to James, and it's beautiful because ever since he's come here, and which is some of the things I wanted to ask him too, when he first got here. I know he moved here to Travis County and had so much to do. So you asked him about that question about what was one of the main things that he's wanted to talk about contributing to. I kind of wanted him to touch a little bit back when he first got here to Travis County. What are some of the fires you had to put out? What were some of the things that were going on that, as every time there's a new a leadership come in, there's always something that has to be redone or reworked or yes. Mm-hmm. So I want him to talk about some of those issues.
Travis County
Absolutely.
is Travis County in and of itself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can tell you that the chairman before me, Dr. Rosemary Edwards, she's fantastic, had done a really good job of growing the party before me and growing relationships before me. It was under her tenure that the party first worked with LULAC, first worked with the NAACP, first partnered up
Yes.
with groups of folks that aren't typically thought of as natural partners for the Republican Party. But they were, because in all cases, for all of us, there was not the level of attention to our principles and our beliefs and our needs here in Travis County. And so she had done all of that. She also did a really good job of making sure that I was prepared to be able to take over. Now, and part of that too was effort on my part. I actually, after I was elected and before my tenure started, I did a set of town hall meetings with precinct chairs and the public all over the county. The county's 1,000 square miles. And so it's fairly easy to have to drive an hour to go visit folks.
Yeah.
And so on purpose, I spread them out and had them all over from, the far west side over in Lakeway, over to Pflugerville in Manor, all around down in South Austin, up in Northwest Austin, all over the county, had meetings with grassroots folks, precinct chairs, donors, and just general members of the public who were interested to say, what are your priorities? What do you most need to see out of the party? What would you most like to see? And it really did shape the strategy that I then ended up implementing. And I was very happy to have that really solid input, and very happy to have the support of Dr. Edwards to help guide me and keep me from making major mistakes. Now, the executive committee on Tuesday night, we had our monthly meeting, and they voted for me to establish a transition committee to make sure that the needs of the party were handled well in this transition to the next chairman. And so we have started a transition committee that will make sure that all the details are handled well, so that as the new chairman steps in, that the party is taken care of and that the party's needs are met. I mean, in June and July alone, there are several legal required deadlines that have to be done for the Republican voters of Travis County to make sure that the early voting ballot board, for example, that there are Republican judges on that board for the early voting for the November election. And we're talking the biggest, presidential election in 8 years.
Yes.
It's very important that that be taken care of well. And I will certainly be doing my part to make sure that transition committee has everything they need so that the party is taken care of well as we transition to this new chairman.
That is so wonderfully put, because it's so much is at stake.
Absolutely.
And it's got to be done, and it's got to be done in order. So thank you for working with that transition party. And I'm so glad that there is a transition party that exists, because, it's much needed.
Yeah, there is a lot to this job. It is the pay is zero, right? And the complaint list is usually pretty big, but it is done right. It can be so rewarding. It can have so much of an impact. That's why I wanted to do it. I wanted to make positive impact for the Republican Party in Travis County. It's really important that whoever be in the job, that be their focus. But there are a lot of details that have to be covered to do it right. I mean, we have legally required financial filings, right? Every one of those, if not done right, exposes a party to thousands of dollars in fines. And that brings us to the last part. And people don't like to talk about money in politics, but the staff likes to be paid, and the rent needs to be paid, and computers have to be bought, and so it requires money to run the party.
Yes.
And the Travis County Republican Party, just like all other county parties in Texas, gets no financial support from any other entity.
Wow.
That's a good point to make. That
Yeah.
is a very good point to make.
It completely runs on the money raised by the chairman and the others in the party. That's it. So the last critical piece of doing this job well is building relationships with donors, large and small, and building a financial base that you can then work from so that you have the staff to make sure, so that you can pay the accountants to make sure the filings are proper, so that you can pay the filing fees, so that you can handle, so that you have a rent. You can pay rent and have an office, right? There's a lot of just built-in costs, no matter how frugally you manage it, and believe me, we've been awfully frugal the last few years. No matter how frugal you are, it still takes funds, and those still have to be raised. And that's the third leg of the stool, if you will, on the job of the county chairman.
So as our chairman, what kind of, I know I kind of said this before, but aside from just outreach, what other things do you hope that are implemented that you were an integral part of, aside from, or with other people from the party that you were, like I said, school choice, that you hope to move forward, whether you encourage the incoming chairman, because I have been a part. It doesn't end with just James Dickey. That's what people need to realize, that it doesn't end with just James Dickey and his opponent. There are people that work within a county sort of realm that I'm going to have to work with Mr. Dickey's opponent, whether I like it or not, whether I can do it or not. I'm going to have to move forward working with Mr. Dickey's opponent, with Chairman Dickey's ideals, and integrate them somehow. So I want this to be something that we can overcome as a party, that Travis County Republican Party can say, look, we were faced with, for lack of a better term, a Donald Trump of sorts, and we handled it. Because there's a lot of times that parties cannot handle difference. They cannot handle something that's outside of establishment. This is something that is outside of James Dickey. And I want to separate James Dickey from anything that's national, because James Dickey has proven to me personally, Adella Fernandez, Hispanic Outreach Director for Travis County Party, that he has dedicated himself to what I have deemed important. And I don't know how many speeches you'll see, I don't know how many presidential rallies you'll see that you have one person give thanks to one and other individual for partaking in something that may not have been the status quo, that may not have been the most popular vote. Sure, let's create a Hispanic outreach director, but James Dickey did it. And this has nothing to do with his opponent, and this has everything to do with my support of Chairman Dickey as he stands. And I fully expect him and hope, and I totally expect that he will follow through with what the chairman is supposed to do till June. But come June, this will not separate a party. This will not separate us as people. As far as I understand, James Dickey has given the best example of what it is to be a leader and move forward with leadership. Whether it's to pass the candle to someone like myself or to his opponent, it doesn't matter. Passing the leadership on from one person to the other and understanding the intricacies and the logistics that go along with that, and to put that responsibility on someone else, whether it's his opponent or one of us sitting right now on the panel. That is something that has rested on the shoulders of only Chairman Dickey, and that is something that we need to give him as the United States, as Austin, Texas. Give Chairman Dickey the sort of, for lack of a better term, the sort of encouragement to move forward with what he needs to do as a chairman moving forward with our party, because I do not want to lose James Dickey as an integral part of TCRP. So with that, I really want to know what part that you plan to play within the party, because people like Marilyn and myself, let's not kid ourselves. We're dealing with the female vote. We're dealing with the minority vote. Let's not kid ourselves. Let's not pretend that this isn't 2016, that this isn't a presidential campaign with two Cubans besides Trump at the presidential helm. So positions like James Dickey have a bottom-up effect in that if James Dickey supports X president, then that's probably going to trickle up. what happened with Chairman Dickey, that I believe, is that people did not do enough homework. And I do believe that I've seen Chairman Dickey saying something along these lines, that when you're not an educated voter, and an educated voter doesn't mean that you went to college. It doesn't mean that you have a PhD in anything. It means that you meant to take the time to choose between Chairman Dickey and his opponent and do your research. Because these are the people that, as Chairman Dickey has already stated, he's already stated what his duties are. Now, whether we move forward as a TCRP, as Travis County Republican Party with Chairman Dickey or his opponent, we will move forward. This does not stop with Chairman Dickey. Thankfully, with
Absolutely.
Chairman Dickey's support, we will move forward. Because as far as I've seen, Chairman Dickey has yet to say anything negative about his incoming, about who will take chairmanship after Chairman Dickey. And for me, that speaks volumes without a megaphone on Chairman Dickey's part.
And you know what, too, Adella, too, what that speaks is that what James has set up really has been an awesome legacy.
Exactly,
And,
I agree.
And it is up to us to take that, what's been set up, and really run with it. I mean, because the vision has been great. So I believe that is what exactly we will do. Each and every Travis County Republican person that helps supports the party, that helps do what it is that we do, even in our own personal lives, if we're out in our own blocks, own communities, block walking, whatever it is we do. I believe that we can take what he's built, and we can run with just what he's done to keep this thing going, to keep the fire running and burning. We just can't say, like you said, he's leaving, so I don't believe he's going to
No, he's
stop
not
doing
leaving.
what he's
He's not
doing.
leaving. He's
But
not
it's not.
leaving.
But we certainly shouldn't just stop doing what we're doing either. You know, he's like he worked
Absolutely.
too hard to get us where we are, so we need to take the baton and we need to run with it too.
Absolutely.
I think
I'm
we've
so
got a
glad-
responsibility.
Yeah.
We have a responsibility as well.
I'm so glad to hear you both say that, because the party was here and had successes before I was here. I like to believe that I've contributed positively to it, but I
You did.
absolutely know that the party will be here and will be successful long after I'm gone. So and it'll be because of the efforts of folks like you. And so to the extent that I was able to attract new people into the party and new energy into the party, that will be to answer your earlier question, that would be the legacy that I would most be proud of, right? The
Exactly.
people on the ground who I was able to help get involved and get plugged in, because those are, those people, they're going to have 100 times the impact that I will have had, because they'll be around, they'll be in neighborhoods I can't be in, they'll be in groups I won't be in, they'll relate in ways I'm not relating. And together we'll have a really big impact, regardless of what the position is or anything. When I spoke Tuesday night to the group, one of the things I said was, I have no idea what the next way is that I'll be able to serve, but I am thrilled to have been able to serve in this role for the last couple of years, and I'm very excited. I mean, we've got over the next 3 months. We've got the Senate district conventions, which I would strongly recommend anyone who attended the precinct conventions show up. But even if you didn't, if you just voted in the primary, or if you didn't vote in any primary, then come on and participate in the Senate district conventions. Most people don't realize. So we have the Electoral College, which people, every 4 years they kind of hear a little bit about it, and it was most infamous a couple of times, including 2000. But the president's not actually elected by just simple majority vote. It's by the Electoral College, and in most states that's winners take all.
That's a
based
very
on,
important fact to know.
Yeah, and
Extremely important fact to know.
yeah, well, similarly, in the primaries, the presidential candidate for the Republican Party and the Democrat Party is not selected by the primary voters, it's by the delegates at the convention.
Really.
And so the key is, how do you get the delegates to the convention? There are all sorts of rules, and the rules, every state can set up their own rules subject to the rules of the national party. And so Texas, for example, we had sort of a modified proportional vote. So if anybody had gotten over 50%, in any congressional district, then they got all the delegates for that congressional district. And if anybody had gotten over 50% statewide, they would have gotten all the delegates for the whole state. But nobody did that. So then it was everybody between 50% and 20%, they split them up, and they split them up proportionately. And so, if you had, like in Travis County, if Travis County was all one congressional district, it was roughly a third each for Trump and Rubio and Cruz. Well, then each one of them would get one delegate each. And you have to have 1,297 delegates to win. So that kind of thing was played out all across the state. Well, those delegates are picked at our state convention. And they're picked by the delegates to the state convention. Well, those delegates to the state convention are picked at our Senate district conventions, and those are this Saturday. And depending on which Texas state Senate district you live in, we've got 4 different Senate districts that some part of Travis County falls into. And those 4 different Senate districts are each having their own separate. So I live in Senate District 24, where Troy Frazier just stepped down.
I will.
And he and in that Senate district in Travis County, we have 31 delegates who can go to the state convention in my congressional district 25, Roger Williams congressional district. And so the 31 state delegates who go from there, they will be part of the group in congressional district 25 that will elect the 3 delegates and 3 alternates to go to the national convention, and it's actually those delegates and alternates who will vote on who our presidential candidate will be for the Republican Party.
Well, we sure
That was a
better make
very-
sure.
That was a very good breakdown. For as far as conventions and how all this kind of proceeds, because I've had one of my own friends that is very politically involved. He texted me, how do I get involved in my Senate convention? So there's a lot of those unanswered questions that your chairman, our current chairman, James Dickey, is able to sort of answer. And these are very important questions. We cannot have one delegate purely because they don't know how to move forward or they don't know the process. This is what your chairman does. Your chairman walks you through these things. That's why you have to have these sort of open communication with our chairmans, whether it's with our leaders, whether it's your co-hosts on the show, or if we have one-on-one, meetings, whether it's with your chairman or your Senate, whatever it is that you need to do, get from point A to point B and do not stop. And thankfully, Chairman Dickey has been a very good proponent of. And I can speak for me personally, because I'm not going to pretend I'm not a statistic. I'm not going to pretend that I'm not female, that I'm not a millennial, that I'm not a colored woman in the United States of America. And James Dickey has given me a very sense of responsibility in that I can do this, that it doesn't matter if my skin color is quote unquote brown and my hair color is brown, that I can do this whether I've got blue eyes and blonde hair or black hair and brown skin. That is something that I can say to Chairman Dickey's credit that I hope continues, is that the ability to talk amongst, we are 3 different skin colors. Let's not pretend it is what it is. And with the Trump rallies becoming increasingly violent, for someone that is very heavily Republican like Chairman Dickey to not condone such violence, to be able to be like, look, we can agree to disagree and we can move forward with some sort of common ground. If you're one of these people that finds this violence funny, or this violence sort of, whether it's Trump or it could be Hillary Clinton, I don't care. But if you're one of these people that condones that kind of violence, you are only hurting the children of our future. And that sounds so cliche, but to bring it back to James Dickey, he has been a model leader, a model chairman of what I expected my chairman of Travis County to be. And that may not be the president of the United States. It may not be Trump. It may not be Rubio. It may not be Bernie or Hillary, but it's my James Dickey. And for me, local politics is the hardest hitting home that you can come to. And your chairman is your quote unquote president. Whether it comes to your MUDs, whether it comes to your city council, your commissioners,
your chairman is the go-to person as to
Yes.
what are my voting times, what are my voting locations, how do I do this, what the hell is a Republican, what is a Democrat, I have no idea, I'm lost, please help me. James Dickey for me, and I can say this personally as Adella Fernandez, that James Dickey for me has been a very great source of information and moving forward and being the quote-unquote color that I am and moving forward. He was at our Cinco de Mayo on in East Austin. He was at our Cinco de Mayo, and he did what he did, being what he is. But for me, that should portray to our viewers that he does not see skin color.
No,
does
he
not see
doesn't.
Marilyn as
I don't even think
what
he.
you and
He
what
just
I-
knows my name is Marilyn Jackson.
And he
and
very
just-
proudly sports that he
Yes, he
was
does.
raised in an inner city
Yes.
school system. So I want to take away from TCRP that they are the quote unquote white party, because James Dickey is incarnate of what it's like to build bridges, to be a liaison of sorts. Because
That looks
I've
like
worked
that
for
looks
the
like
man.
the that looks like the Juneteenth.
Oh, there's Pokey.
That was Juneteenth.
He was down
yeah.
at the Juneteenth
So
celebration as
I
well.
really, Marilyn and I can talk.
Oh my God! There I am over there,
Exactly.
right over there by Jane.
Right next to
That's
me.
I'm looking at
Juneteenth
pictures. I'm like,
celebration.
please don't let me look that.
No, I know. I always tell them, make me skinny.
Yeah,
So-
the Juneteenth event was a great event.
It was a great event.
It was a lot of fun to show up and say, again, just to say, yes, we're here and we care. And let's talk. And we had a great time. What they're showing there, we had a little app we were taking surveys with, and,
That's a
and
good
asking
picture.
people, what does freedom mean to you, and what does liberty? I mean, Juneteenth is about being liberated, right?
And we are talking about Juneteenth, just so
Yes.
we're clear. And this is our school parent empowerment summit for the
Exactly.
east side of Austin. So ask yourself, when was the last time you saw any Republican chairman on the east side of Austin? Literally. And then here we have Mike Lee, our African American outreach director with.
Yeah, that was at our NAACP, at the Austin NAACP banquet. That was
Wow.
fantastic. Yeah, Chairman Lindner, or
This
President
is
Lindner gave us a
an
good shout out.
extremely great. That was a very great, diverse group of
Yes.
pictures to show that what Chairman Dickey has been the leadership of. We can't take that from it. I don't care who you are. You could be the president of the United States at this point. You cannot take from Chairman Dickey what he has done and done for our party locally,
Yes.
local politics, and down the ballot voting. So as far as down the ballot voting, this purely came down to, for me, names. And Chairman Dickey drew second on the ballot. Am
Yep.
I right?
Yeah, I
Okay.
did. So
Okay.
actually, that's the
Why do
greatest
they have that
rebuttal to
there?
anybody who says the program's rigged, right? If it had been rigged, there's no way I would have put my name second.
and that is a great point. That is a great point to show that this was a very fair election, and our
Yep.
winner of sorts, James Dickey, has moved forward with the election results as it stands, because you cannot rob. No matter what party they are, you cannot rob a person of their vote. And if it came to his opponent was whether it was aesthetically more pleasing or whether it was first on the ballot, because I will be the first one to admit I didn't know everybody on my ballot when I voted in my county. I honestly didn't.
Yeah.
And so when it comes to the down the ballot voting, this was the biggest lesson for me as an American voter to really it seems like the pyramid's this way,
Yes.
when really the pyramid is this way. Your most important people, your city council, your commissioners, your sheriffs, all the people that are making your everyday decisions on your rent, your light. I've already said this all before. This comes down to your down the ballot voting. And what your chairman can do is tell you, well, candidate A says XYZ, candidate B says ABC. You make your choice. I'm not going to hold you to it. Make your choice. It's your right as an American citizen. And that is exactly, for me, in my opinion, what James Dickey has done as a chairman. He has never pressured me to stay Republican. He has never pushed Republican ideals on me. What he did for me was really guide me in a direction that led me to be the Hispanic outreach director for the Travis County
Republican Party because I see what I see and you see what you see, and you work very cohesively with Mike Lee, that I think the three of us can say cohesively that we have made some progress. Progress, which is usually a liberal term, but we've made some progress.
Yeah.
We really have in our outreach to the African American community, to the Hispanic Latino community, and for James, I can't give it to James. James Dickey has never made me feel any less of a person, any more of a person, despite his socioeconomic status. His election came down to the almost blind ignorance. Ignorance not in a negative connotation, but it comes down to you should have read your candidate. You should have read your candidates.
Well,
if you know Robert Morrow, you know Robert Morrow. I mean, that's the last of the statement. But it should have come down to
And
James Dickey and Robert Morrow.
we
and
talked
knowing-
earlier, so the number of people who voted doubled. But what was really interesting as we dug into it was only half of the people who voted had ever voted in any Republican primary before.
Ever.
Ever.
Wow.
And 20% of the people, the last primary they voted in was a Democrat primary. And
We see
30% of the
we see
people,
where,
30% of the people had never voted in any primary. This was the very first primary ever that they had ever showed up for.
wasn't that amazing?
Yeah, and so
That is a good thing, kind of, though, in that it's the first primary.
yeah,
ever
I mean,
voting.
I'm a big fan of people getting involved and stepping up and having their voice heard. Right, and that's absolutely fine. It is absolutely 100% their right to do so. I hope that in all those cases that they voted in the Republican primary because they were actually excited about a candidate. Right, one way or the other, either excited about voting for a candidate or excited about voting against a candidate. Right, either of those is fine. Where it became troublesome in a lot of races was when there wasn't familiarity down the ballot. There was no
Exactly,
familiarity,
yeah.
and then it's a wild guess. And the one thing, we're all taught by our mothers, clean your plate, right? Eat all your vegetables, right? The message people need to get is it is perfectly fine to come in, vote for one race, and call it good. That in the other races, if you're not familiar with who the other candidates are, you're better off not doing anything than doing the wrong thing, right?
Exactly.
And
So does this mean that they have to vote on the same in the same party for the general election, or can they
No.
do a they can do a
They
split
can
vote?
swap.
They
can swap.
absolutely can swap during the general election. Now, the runoff we're about to have, the runoff doesn't affect the presidential race at all. And a lot of the statewide races, there's no need for a runoff. So one of the most interesting ones, I love when Battleground Texas was making the claim that because of demographics, because Texas is going to be a majority state any minute now, right?
Yeah.
That automatically doomed the Republican Party, forever, which I think is way overly simplistic and just plain wrong.
Extremely.
We don't think that.
Especially
Yeah.
when we point to something. You want to know who the highest primary vote getter ever in the history of Texas? Supreme Court Justice Eva Guzman.
I love her.
Just won her reelection.
I love her.
No other candidate in the history of Texas has received as many primary votes as she just got in the Republican primary, right?
I voted for her.
So people who say that, that either Republican voters are automatically, biased against certain names, or that Republican voters aren't willing to look at the quality of a candidate as opposed, and her opponent was Joe Poole, right? About as basic a name as you could hear. And she won by a landslide. And she's a fantastic justice, very well qualified, and absolutely thrilled that she won her race. Even though I know people are related to Joe Poole, and I like them as well. But it just goes to show that all the predictions, all the dire predictions about the soon to be end of the Republican Party are way overshot. And we're going to do this transition. We've got the conventions coming up. We also have the primary runoff. Now, the one thing that you do have to stick to is if you voted in one party's primary, you can't switch and vote in the other
Yeah.
party's runoff, right?
Yeah.
So only people who did not vote in the Democrat primary
That's a very
are
clear
allowed
distinction to make.
to vote in the
Very.
Republican runoff. And we do here in Travis County, depending on where you live, we either have 3 races you'll be voting in or 4 races that you'll be voting in. So we've got where I live, the Senate District 24, there's a runoff for that position. And
I hope you're writing this down,
Yeah.
Travis County.
that's Dawn Buckingham, who is an eye doctor who lives here in Travis County and served on the Lake Travis Independent School District school board, and is a fantastic candidate. Versus Susan King, who's a former rep from up in Abilene. That district, it's a little known fact. Texas state senators who are paid a grand total of $600 a month. That's their pay. Texas
Wow.
state senators,
It
yeah,
is.
Wow.
$600 a month,
Wow.
right? Texas state senators have more constituents than an average congressional U.S. congressman.
Wow.
Let
So-
that sink in, people.
That's
That's
amazing.
that's a very small number. Let that sink in, seriously.
There are 34 Texas U.S. congressmen. There are only 31 Texas state senators.
Wow.
So on average, those state senators have almost 1 million constituents each.
So is it almost like they have to be their own self-made entrepreneur in order
Pretty
to run
much.
for Texas State Senate?
Well, for
How
whether
would
it's
someone
for
like Marilyn or I run
exactly.
for like
Well,
Senate or congressional?
you absolutely have to have a job that will let you take almost 3 months off.
Yeah.
And
these
so
are good,
Because
these
it's
are good things to
part-time.
know. These are good things to know if you watching is planning to run for a congressional Senate.
yeah, in fact, there's a really sad story of somebody. So depending on how you see it listed, you'll see it listed as $600 a month, or you'll see it listed as $7,200, which is the annual pay. And there's a sad story of somebody
So
who
now that's a Texas Senate.
right. That's a
And
Texas state
Texas
Senate.
House.
Yeah.
That's how
and-
much money
and the
your
Texas
representatives
House. Yeah,
have.
yeah, they are
Wow.
not good.
They're-
Good news.
so they're
getting
not in
rich
it
off-
for the money.
Yeah,
No,
they're
no.
not.
That's good to
Yeah, they're not in it for the paycheck. That's for sure. But there is a sad story of a guy who ran and misunderstood and thought it was $7,200 a month, thought it was a nice increase, and quit his other job, only to find out it was a dramatic cut in pay. So, yeah, but you absolutely, the people who do it, I think we have the best balance. But we have people who are serving in our House and Senate who have to go back and work and live under the laws that
Yes.
got passed, right? They don't get to just go into the bubble and stay in the bubble. They have to come out and be citizens like the rest of us 80% of the time. And that's a big thing.
It is a big thing.
That's one of the, when the Texas Constitution is set up by people who really didn't trust government.
Yeah.
That's why the governor doesn't have a lot of power. I mean, the governor doesn't even get to appoint the land commissioner or the agriculture commissioner, right? Because the founders who set up our Constitution just didn't want anybody to have too much power. So those are
That's a
statewide
good
ballot
thing.
races. It's a
I
very
mean,
good
yeah.
thing.
It is a good thing. I mean, there are other positions he gets to appoint, but that is good. The people do need to pick and choose who it is that they want.
Absolutely. But that also means we got to take those seriously. When somebody's
Yes.
running for ag
Oh, yes.
commissioner, there was a guy, one of my favorite races in 2014 when Governor Abbott was running against Wendy Davis. She spent, $39 million and got
Was it on
39% of the, she got, oh yeah, they were throwing them during
Yeah,
the thing.
in the Senate.
Yeah, that was crazy.
Oh, my God.
She spent $39 million on her race and got 39% of the vote. There was a guy who ran as ag commissioner for the Democrat Party didn't spend a dime, and he got 37% of the vote. So it was clearly
That
a
is
bunch,
amazing.
37% of the people clearly just cast their vote by party and knew nothing about the candidate. I mean, literally, he didn't even have a website. right? He had not spent a dime. And so you can't, because our Constitution is designed where really so much power is in the hands of the voters, we cannot take this stuff lightly, especially on the down ballot races where it's not going to be
Exactly.
all over the news. It's not going to
Exactly.
automatically be in your ear. If
And
you
those are the
don't,
ones that hit closer
if
to
you
home.
really don't know, yeah, then better safe than sorry. And
Well,
if in doubt, don't.
That's true. I'm glad that Sid Miller won.
Me too.
Also, I wanted to, you made a valid point because what really bothers me though is when we have these incumbents that are in office and they do absolutely nothing to, but besides go down and pay their filing fee. And that, especially when they're not the best for the people.
Yeah.
When they don't technically represent their district or their constituents the best that they can, it just really bothers me that people just continue to when you vote straight ticket, I mean, it really bothers me that people continue to.
Unfortunately, with Chairman Dickey's election, it wasn't a straight ticket sort of thing.
Yeah, there was
It
no option
down
to
the
do that.
ballot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why. That's why I don't care whatever small town you live in. I don't care if you're annexed or not.
Yes.
When you have to look at ballots this way instead of this way, because that's how Chairman Dickey is in the position that he's been, because he's a great chairman. And I am saying nothing negative against Robert Morrow because I have not had the opportunity to work with him. But when you don't pay attention to down the ballot, these are the people that are running your city council, your MUDs. These are the people that are affecting your everyday life, the roads that you drive on. These are the people affecting that. So whether you look at
Yes.
James Dickey and his white hair and his white skin, or you look at Miss Marilyn and her beautiful brown skin and her black hair, or you look at me with my light skin and my black hair, quit putting race into your votes. Pay attention to the James Dickeys of the world, to the Robert Morrows of the world, and make an educated choice. Because what you don't realize, what the everyday voter doesn't realize, is that puts people like myself and Marilyn that still have to deal with the chairman, whether you guys like it or not. As an outreach director, I still have to work with whatever chairman is given in front of me. That's me. That's my personal time. So whether you are for or pro or against James Dickey or his opponent, that has nothing to do with James Dickey, unfortunately, because your vote casts what you view culturally, whether it's African American and Mike Lee and or myself and Gavino Fernandez doing everything that we do. It is our vote, and right now that we have never had a more diverse, in my generation anyway, a more diverse presidential election. So the way that this trickles down or up from chairman to federal politics, ask your chairman, whether it's James Dickey or I don't care what color, what party, ask your questions, because this will dictate what your children, my children, grandchildren will move forward.
So what you're saying, Adella, is that however way we vote,
Without
we're going to have to live
with what we have.
Exactly. And that's not always cool, because sometimes if you don't take the opportunity to vote and you figure, well, my vote just doesn't count. Well, really, your vote does count. It didn't get counted because you didn't go and vote. But then again, however we do vote, when we do vote, we still have to make for sure that we make our election sure, because we
Educated.
still have to live
Yes.
with
An
that.
educated vote.
We still have to live with the outcome of what happens of who gets put in office.
Especially because you and I are both affected.
Everyone is
Immediately.
everyone is affected by.
We'll let our guests have have the last comment.
Yes, we will.
Well, I'll just
Sorry,
say thanks a
James.
million for having me here. It's always fun to hang out with you guys, and this was a great opportunity. I really appreciate it.
Well, we appreciate you. We appreciate everything that you do and everything that you've done and everything that you continue to do. We thank you for it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you very much to Chairman James Dickey.
Perfect. Not too bad anyway.
That was great.